Welcome everybody to today's webinar brought to you by Whip-Around. And our topic that we're going to cover is how modern waste fleets are improving the safety of those fleets in the modern environment. We're going to cover a few topics today, but broadly speaking, the agenda is going to cover what we have here, and we're going to touch on safety. Safety is a big issue. Understanding what safety means in the context of the waste issue and how we solve it is a big part of this. Where within the industry and what sectors are more impacted by the safety issues? Waste is a very broad terminology for many different facets of the industry. So whereabouts is safety a bigger risk than others? Vehicle maintenance and safety, we will touch on some statistics and some numbers that point to the fact that vehicle maintenance and operations around the fleet contribute hugely to the safety posture of waste companies. And then we'll go into some solutions. How can you, as a waste operator, improve your safety posture, your position, your compliance position? And that really starts with leveraging technology. There's a lot of technology in the marketplace. What of that technology is going to help you reduce risk and improve safety, and how to kick into that? We've got a great example following on from that of a Whip-Around customer, good companies, and they have a great story on how they've leveraged technology to improve not just the safety aspects of their fleet, but the correlation between safety and profitability, their bottom line and efficiency, all bundled into one. Now we'll round out just with a quick how Whip-Around can help you and tie some of those themes together. So thanks for staying with me, and there will be links to us beneath this webinar, and happy to answer any questions that you might have that we don't get to cover in this particular slot today. So we're going to start here. Safety, the big issue, and safety in the waste industry is a big issue. It is currently the 7th most dangerous industry in the US. Now, there is a positive news story in that it used to be 4th, then it was 5th, 6th, and now most recently in the 2021 era, it has dropped back down to 7th. So that is a good news story, and it is a focus. We work with some of our industry partners, the NWRA, and they really emphasize the industry's focus on getting out of the top 10. These numbers really are linked back to fatalities. And when we look at some of these fatality numbers here, it's important to note that these don't include members of the public that may be impacted in crashes or issues around collections. These are workers that have been killed within industry operations. Now, an interesting fact here is that compared to the UK, the US has a 10 times higher fatality rate from workers within the waste sector. So I think that really points to why this issue is such an important one for the industry. We're going to cover a little bit of that in the next few slides, but digging deeper into these numbers, some interesting stats that overall, across all industries in the US, there's a 3.6 average fatality rate per 100,000 workers. In waste, it fluctuates every year, but it's generally in the 30s. So a much higher propensity for fatalities in the waste industry compared to other sectors. 38% generally across industries are related to transportation. So in all other industries, 38% of fatalities have some link back to the transportation component of those industries. In waste, that's in the 60s. So again, a much higher propensity for transportation or the fleet to be involved in fatalities when we look at the data around the waste sector. Some other interesting pointers here are that 70% roughly of the industry is responsible for 70% of the industry is responsible only for 30% of the deaths. And what that is really telling us that larger, more diligent organizations that have better processes, they've adopted better technology, are responsible for a much lower representation in these fatalities. And it is generally the smaller owner-operators, potentially people that have much broader responsibilities and less focus on some of the things that we will talk about today, on safety. And I think the data starts pointing that out. There are some obvious reasons why safety is a big issue, depending on where within the waste sector you're looking at. There is obviously heavy equipment. There is blind spots. You are in metro areas that have a lot of distractions. You've got all sorts of different dangers and risks associated with particularly the collections element, but all through the waste sector when it comes to the machinery and the sort of size of the operations that we're talking to. And to round this out, I think one of the surprising facts in this graph here is that waste is a more dangerous industry than underground mining. I've always thought underground mining would be a pretty dangerous day job to wake up to every day. Turns out the waste industry is one peg above that. So within the industry, where does safety sit? Where is this more prevalent? In the last slide, we talked about the correlation between transport and fleet making up 60% of fatalities in the waste sector. Again, that is up on 38% across all other industries in the US. So generally speaking, when we're talking about trucks, collections, machinery, bins, etc., that is where the issues lie. And we can see in this graph here provided by Swana that collections is definitely where the highest percentage of fatalities come in. We still see risk in landfill, and we also see some risk in the MRF side of things. But the theme of this webinar generally is going to focus on collections. When it comes to fleet, when it comes to maintenance, we see the biggest opportunity for improvement in that part of the operation. A lot of the industry will tell you that these risks and the ultimate incidents that come from them generally link back to situational awareness. They are issues where drivers are not totally aware of where other staff or employees are around machinery, when vehicles are moving, making sure that they're aware of simple things like hills and braking and obstacles, a lot of movement related issues, as there are a lot of blind spots around the heavy equipment. You've got runners moving across roads and behind heavy equipment as well. So none of this should be a surprise to us. But what we can do is look at how we can mitigate and minimize some of this risk so that number, that nice downward trend that we have collections from 2018 continues right into the future. So fleet maintenance is going to be a big part of how we start impacting some of the outcomes that we're looking to as an industry, and certainly from a Whiparound perspective, as we're helping our customers in the sector improve some of these data points for them. So vehicle maintenance and safety, these things go hand in hand. This is really why we at Whiparound are in business. We have two very core pillars. We want to help people with vehicle maintenance, and we want to demonstrate the efficiency cost outcomes of those, and they very much correlate to positive safety outcomes as well. When it comes to waste and when it comes to fleet, the two main sort of regulators in this space are the Department of Transportation, or more specifically the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, the FMCSA, and they really govern all the commercial motor vehicles across the US. If most, depending on the type of vehicles that you're operating, but most of these, if they're over 10,000 pounds, are going to fall under the remit of the DOT. You're going to have a DOT number, and you're going to be bound by some rules and regulations that you're going to have to adhere to. But given the operational nature of the industry, OSHA is also a huge regulator in the space. This covers all of the health and safety aspects and policies and procedures, which we'll touch on in a little while. But that really covers the environment that people and machinery are operating in. And, you know, the nexus of these is that you're dealing with rules and regulations. You have responsibilities as an officer of a company, as a business owner, or as an employee charged with some of these things, that you're going to have to make sure that your fleet is safe, whether it's moving or whether it's part of a wider environment. So when it comes to vehicle maintenance, DOT is very specific on what has to happen within vehicle maintenance for you to stay compliant, all with the desired outcome of less crashes and less deaths on the road involving those trucks. Today is not about drilling into all those rules and regulations, and if you are operating commercial motor vehicles, collections trucks, and things like that, you should have a pretty good idea of what your rules and responsibilities are there. But vehicle maintenance more broadly has a direct impact on safety. It seems obvious, but when you have poor maintenance, you have an increase in parts failures, breakdowns, distracted staff, increased pressure on your working environment, which all lead to poorer decision-making, distracted drivers, and ultimately a decline in the safety posture and the safety culture of your business. So the correlation here between vehicle maintenance and safety really underpins what's known as a safety culture. Drivers and plenty of statistics and surveys have pointed to the fact that drivers across many industries find that poor vehicle maintenance impacts their working conditions and impacts the culture of their business and ultimately the safety culture that they operate in. If they feel that people up the chain are not looking after the vehicles that they are operating every day, it puts them at risk and it puts them in difficult situations where other people that are either involved in the business or members of the general public that are, close by to where they are operating are put at risk. So vehicle maintenance should be front and center, and it should be eliminating these distractions so that the roles and responsibilities of people operating these vehicles and machinery can be very much focused on the task at hand and mitigating some of the safety risk that comes from it. If you miss the vehicle maintenance piece, you're going to have a knock-on effect of poor safety into that culture, as there is a very clear linkage between the perception of a business and how much they focus on safety and maintenance and accountability through that process, and how employees, staff, and general operators are carrying that on into their day-to-day lives. Okay, now there is a cost. We touched on this in the last slide, but often we look at safety as a process, as a burden, as a requirement that has to be managed on a day-to-day basis. It's a set of rules we have to understand. It's cumbersome, but oftentimes we are not considering the actual dollars and cents cost of poor safety within a business. We just talked about the DOT and OSHA, and there's an obvious starting point there as we look at the fines and violations that you can wear through roadside inspections, through DOT, getting pulled over, going through weigh stations. If your vehicle is not up to scratch, if maintenance is leaving safety issues unattended, there will be a direct correlation to the fines and violations that you are getting on the road. This also increases your chance of audits, and anyone that is accustomed to a DOT audit is going to know that, plenty of times that increased focus, that intervention from the authorities is just going to be a slippery slope. PSA scores are going to be impacted. Attention is going to be layered on. You're going to have increased downtime as you are going through enforcement stops. It really does snowball, as what starts out as minor issues can then become much bigger impacts on the business. You also have OSHA issues here, and in the same vein as the DOT, if you do have some incidents or some risk areas identified within your business, you're going to start feeling the heat from OSHA, and that can become a very complex and thorny issue to get yourself out of. There are obviously fines and violations that are affected with that. But I think the biggest cost here, and it's something that we never actively hope, obviously, that we want to be involved in. We think that it's never going to happen to us. But in this day and age, unfortunately, we've just looked at those numbers. There are a higher propensity for fatalities in this waste sector, particularly when it comes to the fleet and it comes to transportation. If you are unlucky enough to be involved in some sort of incident where there is a fatality or a serious accident or injury, then the environment for litigation is only heading in one direction. We do a lot of work with our customers on nuclear verdicts and how to mitigate the risk around fleet if if the event of a serious crash or fatality happens. In the last 10 years, the penalties and the rulings of litigation that relate back to fleet have gone up 1,000%. So you're now having average awards in those cases well north of $1 million. There are instances where some of these are in the tens of millions of dollars. And they're called nuclear verdicts for a reason, because they are really like dropping a nuclear bomb on a business. You are very unlikely to survive litigation on some of these specific fleet impacts should you be in one of these unfortunate situations. So managing fleet and making sure that you are not putting yourself at any extra risk of any of these issues is certainly good business. And we're going to touch on how to do that in a second. But identifying the fact that safety and cost and efficiency have a very direct correlation. And that's before you even get into some of the cultural and performance issues around your employees. If they feel like they are operating in an unsafe environment, the business is not looking after them and the assets that they operate, then you're probably going to have a knock-on effect into performance, employee engagement, and all of those things that go out into the world every day, customers, customer service, etc. So here we get into how are you going to actually improve your safety posture. We've talked about safety being a big issue. We've talked about where it lies predominantly in and around collections and the fleet. We've covered how vehicle maintenance can play a really important role in impacting the safety position and posture of your company. And here is a really clear and concise plan that you can implement to start addressing all of the things that are going to help you put yourself in that better position should you encounter an unfortunate event. Now, the safety management cycle is something that is used in many industries. It is specifically used by the FMCSA and their audit process. So if we're looking again at OSHA and DOT, what we see is the DOT side of things is absolutely looking at when they come in and review your operation, they want to see how you have taken some of these steps, and they will map this against the safety management cycle. And I think this is a great reference point for any business to start putting that plan in place. So there's 6 steps within the safety management cycle, and they're all covered here at this little diagram. There's firstly policies and procedures. And I'll cover that off first. That really asks businesses to have clearly identified and accessible and communicated policies and procedures. What is expected of employees in certain situations? What needs to happen before certain events? Pre-trip inspections are a great example of this. Maintenance cadences and intervals is a good example. What happens in the event of an incident? What happens in the event of a vehicle failure? All of these need to be documented, and everybody that needs to know where and what these policies are needs to have these communicated to them. Secondly, you've got roles and responsibilities. Who is responsible for enforcing and acting out these policies and procedures? And that can start from drivers doing pre-trip inspections right up to management reviewing that these inspections are happening, to mechanics possibly having responsibility for repairing failures within a specific timeline. Having those clearly documented and having those people well aware of what their responsibilities are is very important. Qualification and hiring. This comes back particularly to commercial motor vehicles and different asset classes. So again, when we look at the commercial motor vehicle space, even outside waste, are your drivers properly licensed? Have they had the required medicals? Are they being tested for drugs and alcohol at the right times? And have they had any infringements on those? Making sure you're taking the proactive, preventative steps and the people that you hire to work in your operation. Training and communication. This is an ongoing requirement of any business, even ones that aren't out in the physical operations world. Making sure that your team are aware of the law, that they understand how to safely use equipment, that they understand emergency procedures. Even in an office environment, everyone needs to know how to evacuate the building, where the fire equipment is. And that really just ramps up at the physical operations world where people need to have that training. And I think training is a constant. You cannot expect people to take things on from one training session. These need to be regular. And again, you need to document that you are doing these. Monitoring and tracking, very, very important. Safety is iterative, and I think that is probably the biggest element to all of this. You cannot set up your policies and procedures, tell people they're responsible, hire the right people, fire out a training session, and expect everything to go smoothly. You have to put regular iterative review processes in place. You need to review how these things stand in current environments. The environment changes all the time. Your fleet might grow. You'll get new contracts. You'll be working in different parts of the city that have different roading networks or different things that need to be considered. So monitoring and tracking the performance of all of this is very important. And off the back of that, meaningful action. Identify when things have changed. Identify where things are failing. And not everything will go to plan all the time. So how can you take meaningful action looking at those first 5 steps? Are your policies and procedures adequate and relevant? Do they need change? Do you have the right people? Are you putting the right sort of thresholds and qualification benchmarks in place for the people you're bringing on? Is your training right? Is it relevant to what you're currently doing? And do you have the right monitoring and tracking? If any of those things needs work, you need to take meaningful action. This shouldn't just be a moment in time where you have an incident and you quickly rush back and see whether you have all of this in place. You really should be doing this proactively every month or at least every quarter, getting the right people in the room and actually looking at what you have and making sure it's relevant. Documenting that is just as important. And this is where you're going to be able to mitigate some of the risk should you end up in that unfortunate situation of an incident, particularly a fatality. What the authorities are going to be looking at is how much proactive work had you done to minimize the likelihood of this happening. So it's no good just having a cup of coffee and having a chat about it, write minutes about it, have all of this in a folder, really document the fact you take this seriously, and it will go a huge way to helping you defend your position in the event of litigation and minimize that liability. So all I would say is, if you haven't already, there's plenty of good resources out there to put this in place. Reach out to us at Whip Around. We're happy to help you with some of the things that fall into our world here. But hammering home the fact, be proactive. It is 6 steps, and have an answer to all of these questions so that you are not left wanting in the event of an incident. So we have a solution to all of this, which is the good news. A solution to the problem, which is technology. Now, we've just talked about the safety management cycle. It talks about accessibility. It talks about documentation. It talks about accountability and proof of the things and policies that you have in place. And in this day and age, when you have people working from everywhere, you have multiple locations, the only way to connect that really is digitally, and using technology to do that, and using automation. So manual processes are not putting you at risk, and there aren't gaps in the way that you're managing this. There is a lot of technology out there. We're working a lot with driver cameras, with rear-facing cameras, with maintenance and inspection software, just to name a few. And the outcomes are accountability. You've got repetitive processes. You're guiding your employees and your operators through specific cadences of what needs to be done. You've got evidence in the event of liability. You're not going through filing cabinets. You're not relying on people's recollection of events or policies that you have. And being able to clearly demonstrate this to your team and be seen to be very deliberate in your prioritization of safety, it's going to have that knock-on effect that we talked about. That safety culture is really, really powerful. And it's got to start from the top. It's got to start with deliberate action taken by you as a business to really advance and put that line in the sand that safety is important to you guys and to the business in general. What we're going to watch here is a quick video of Good Companies, which is a Whip Around customer. They are a great example of somebody in the industry who is leveraging technology for the outcomes that we are talking about. They have taken the lead from the data. They prioritize safety, and they are a great example of how technology can help. So we'll listen to them.
My name's Todd Roach. I'm the Senior Maintenance Director for GCR. We've been here since 2018, running the maintenance department. We're a refuge company out of the Baltimore area. Really good start of the company. It's a great family atmosphere. Total assets is around 140 with 5 locations. For GCR, we have all rear load residential trucks with mostly Max, a couple of B-Rails stuck in there. Primarily McNeilus and Leach bodies. We laid whip around out in my Southern Maryland location first, and we started using it, and the more we used it, the more we liked it. With me having this many locations, it's hard for me to be at every location all the time and keep up with all the books. With whip around, I can be at any one location and look at any of the driver write-ups for the day and make sure the repairs are getting done without being on location 24/7. By customizing it, we force them to take a picture of the front of the truck, the back of the truck, or behind the blade. They didn't want to take that picture behind the blade because they knew it meant that they had to clean behind the blade. Some people didn't want to use their phone, but they all came around to that pretty quick. Once they realized that using their phone for a whip around was much easier than carrying a book around. I had a warranty issue with a new truck. One of the pins for the sweep blade had come loose and fallen out en route, causing the cylinder to come out and bent the sweep blade. So with whip around, I was able to go back and prove that the bolts didn't back out, which would have been a maintenance issue, that the weld on the pin broke. So I was able to prove and still get under warranty. The cost of a blade, which is probably a blade and a cylinder, $4,000. That's one of the 3 pictures that we force our drivers to take, is behind the blade, because if they don't clean it, and anybody in the refrigerant industry knows that trash comes back and it gets compacted behind and under the cylinder. The hydraulic lines break, the cylinders break, and the cost is extreme if it's not cleaned. But by us forcing the driver to take that picture, first of all, he already knows he's got to clean it, or we're going to send him back to clean it. And we can then monitor, was it clean before a major failure, or was this a driver issue, and we can address it accordingly. If I'm not checking or inspecting behind the blades, I'm asking for trouble. I'm asking for downtime. The support has been absolutely unbelievable. There's not been a call not returned. If I send an email, it gets responded to the first day. Great customer service. The number of trucks that I have down is decreased because I can see things before they become major things. I can see that the driver's writing something up, and I can make sure that it gets addressed. Whereas if it was in a book, I wouldn't see it till I did a site visit to that location. So it would get put behind, and whenever you put something in maintenance behind, it always gets worse. The less downtime you have, the better off in any business. As long as I'm keeping the trucks on road and keeping the routes picked up, we're doing what we're supposed to do.
Well, I think that was a pretty clear demonstration of how easy it is to be able to implement some simple technology in your business and have great outcomes. Efficiency, productivity, safety, all bundled into one. So to summarize, I think what we want to really recap on here today is safety is paramount. And if you get safety right, you get so many other things right in your business. Poor safety is expensive, and it's beyond just fines and violations and that really obvious dollars and cents cost. Poor safety, good safety, both have a very outsized impact on your business. And there are a lot of downstream benefits and downstream costs in where you land. Safety is iterative. You need a platform that is going to be able to constantly evolve, be able to enable you to take quick action, and be able to pull that evidence up whenever you need it, should there be an issue, or should you need to quickly review, assess, and measure some of the operations and processes that you have. Technology is the essential tool to unlock this. I think long gone are the days where filing cabinets, vanilla folders, conversations, and pieces of paper are going to cut it. The environment is getting far more litigious. The penalties are higher, and getting ahead of that is going to hold your business in very good stead. But it is not a complicated process. Taking measurable steps now is going to get you ahead of the curve. Looking at some of that technology that you may not yet have adopted, putting some of these processes in place and being able to regularly review from a laptop, from your mobile phone, some of the action you're taking is only a couple of clicks away. And I believe that anyone that hasn't started on this journey, it's easier than you think. Change management is a big part of what we do at Whip Around, and we certainly pride ourselves in taking people on the journey when it comes to what we do. And with that, a nice little closeout segue here. How can Whip Around help you? We did want to talk about safety today and some of the outcomes. We are one of the technologies that can have a very quick impact on your business. Whip Around is a fleet maintenance software platform at heart. So we take reactive maintenance from inspections, pair that with proactive maintenance from service scheduling, creating work orders, assigning to mechanics or vendors externally, tying all of that together in a very cohesive platform that enables drivers to be accountable for the inspections on the equipment that they're doing every day, hugely customizable for any piece of equipment, asset, hydraulics, anything that you need to be checking on a regular basis. We will be able to tailor our platform for that. And having that centralized so that you can see issues as they come through in real time, you can take quick action, you can track and manage those issues through to repair, and you can also manage that proactive side. So you are regularly inspecting these things outside of issues that may pop up. Reach out to Whip Around, www.whiparound.com, to enable us to have a bit of a chat to you if you're not using a tool like this. We're happy to give you a trial, show you how it works, and really join the dots for some of your aspirations, be it DOT compliance, be it OSHA, be it just efficiency and workflows around how your fleet is operating. And we'll guarantee you, you're going to have a positive outcome on the safety posture of your business. So we look forward to talking to you. I hope you enjoyed today. 30 minutes isn't a long time when you're tackling a topic as big as safety, particularly in an industry like waste. But please hit us up with any questions. We're happy to talk. We're happy to talk about anything safety related. We have great partners and integration partners that we work with to combine the best in class technology to solve problems that you have. So with that, I'll leave you back to your day, and thank you for listening.